question. We can skip past that. But if you still have an answer, if you have it answered in the chat, I'd still love to see and to know what is your all-time favorite holiday movie. And give me a moment. I've lost my chat screen, so I've got to find that here again so I can see all your thoughts and comments coming in. And as always, if you have questions as we go through today, feel free to drop them in the chat. Ones that are relevant for like we must answer in the moment, I'll certainly stop and pause and we can talk about them. Some we might save for the end for a Q&A time. But without further ado, let's jump in. I don't have too much on the housekeeping side for you today, but I do want to set the table for what to expect for today. I don't expect that we're going to do some like ultra deep dive into brand new strategies and like totally off the wall brand new tactics today. We are far too late in the giving season to hit the reset button and start from scratch on anything. I'm hopeful that today we reinforce a lot of things. We're going to go over a couple main points. Number one, we're going to understand the significance of the rest of the year-end season that's coming after Colorado Gives Day. So we've got a week until we're at the deadline, but that's not the end of the game. We've got still the rest of the year-end season coming up after that. So we want to understand how much is still at stake. And then we're going to look at some proven tactics to go boost results in emails during the last week of the year specifically. We're going to spend the bulk of our time actually looking at tactics that you can implement on your website to drive more of the right traffic to your giving page. And then we'll reinforce a couple key concepts around your year-end donation page. It shouldn't look all that different than your Colorado Gives Day page. The language might tweak and change a little bit, but we'll reinforce some of those concepts. So that's where we're going. And then ultimately, our homework and our action item for the end of today is to go implement at least one tactic to increase urgency to give on your website or on your donation page before the end of the month. Ideally, that's something you could go actually install this week leading up to Colorado Gives, but then especially in prep for the last week of the year. So keep your eyes out as we go through today. Maybe grab a pencil or pen in your notebook and jot down, what are some of those key ideas that you think you could actually go install and implement. Before we dive into some of the data around what's at stake in the future and later in December, before we dive into proven tactics, I just want to take a quick look at Giving Tuesday. Jordan shared a little bit about Colorado Gives overall and how that's trending and how that's performing, which sounds like it's moving in the right direction, is up from last year so far, which is awesome. As we look at Giving Tuesday ourselves, so we have a tool called Avid. It's actually a separate company that we spun off in the past year as we're trying to become just more sophisticated with data and provide deeper data insights to the industry at large. We're looking at a data set of about 65 organizations, represents $12 billion in annual revenue with 25 million annual donors. And so what we're doing is tracking how revenue is coming in. There's so much more data in here. I'll give you an opportunity to get access to it here in a moment, but this is what we're seeing in the lead up to Giving Tuesday and the day of Giving Tuesday. And we'll be tracking the next couple days following Giving Tuesday. It's kind of this 10-day Giving Tuesday window. We're seeing similar trends, not the same like big gap that I think Jordan is seeing on the Colorado Gives side. But with this data set, we're also seeing an increase. So far, tracking ahead of previous years, revenue has been up in the days leading up to Giving Tuesday. On the day itself, it is ahead of last year by about 4.5%. It's about on track with what we were seeing in 2022, a little bit up, like 0.01 million. So a little bit ahead of what we saw in 2022, but all things moving in the right direction, which is exciting and good to see. So it sounds like all signals are saying we're doing well so far, which is good. I do want to give you this to go check out. Again, this tool, it's called Avid, is designed to give you a much deeper look into the performance of your fundraising program. It's built using methodologies and thinking that we've created here at Next After. So what we wanted to do is go build kind of our way of thinking about fundraising programs into a tool that you can just plug into, connect your data to see how your program is performing in a much deeper way than you typically can get from building your own dashboards in like Looker Studio or trying to extract a bunch of data from your donation platform. This is connect your CRM. It syncs everything together and kind of turns it into some data magic for you. But What is free forever is the benchmarking side of this tool. So if you scan this QR code or you go to nextafter.com/avid, you can actually go sign up and you can connect your data to the tool, and you can go see how you are tracking and comparing to the rest of this data set every single day of the year-end season and far beyond that. So there's lots of different benchmarks available in this tool. Even if you don't connect your data set, you can still see the live benchmarks. You just won't be able to compare yourself to it. So I'd highly encourage you to go check this out to get some deeper insights on how things are performing this year-end season. There's a Giving Tuesday report, and then there's a year-end overall report looking at online revenue, and then one looking at all channels combined. So that's just a resource for you to go check out. And then if you want to go dive deeper with Avid and actually use the full tool, you can go pursue that as well. Before we dive in totally, I do want to just hit the brakes and hit pause for a moment and just open the floor in the chat specifically. Do you have any questions, any major things that are top of mind, burning questions as you're leading up to Colorado Gives Day? I can't promise that we can answer every single question right here, right now, but I just want to give you this space to drop a question to make sure that either myself or Jordan can get back to you. Maybe we can answer a question today. Maybe it requires some follow-up, but if you have any kind of burning questions, please know that you have resources to go get answers. So feel free to drop those in the chat just as we go. We don't have to get them all out immediately here, but again, if there's any burning questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. Emily's asking, can we still use Avid if we don't have a CRM? Yes, you can. Even if you have no data to go connect to it, you can still go sign up and get access to the benchmarks. You just won't have any comparison data to see how you're tracking. There's a handful of native integrations with some of the most common CRMs, and they're always working on more. But even if you don't have a CRM that is directly integrated, you can also do a manual upload of your data as well. So there's a few options for you there, Emily. Again, any other burning questions about Colorado Gives Day, feel free to drop them in the chat or send a note to Jordan or myself in Slack. Let's talk about what's at stake coming up after Colorado Gives Day. I know there's still a lot to happen in the next 7 days, and we're hoping for big results, but I want you to make sure that you have a plan for what's coming after as well. I know we've talked a lot about that when we talked about building your email plans for the year-end season. We talked a little bit about some of these revenue metrics, but I want to reinforce them in case you either missed them or we've gotten so deep in the Colorado Gives Day cycle that maybe we've forgotten about them. So let's resurface them here. Here's what we saw last year in 2023 as we're looking at when revenue comes in. I don't have a clear benchmark for Colorado Gives Day, so I'm kind of using Giving Tuesday as my benchmark because they fall within that same kind of week window. But here's what we found as we looked at the full year-end season. We're measuring November 15th through the end of the year, so about a 45-day window. And what we found last year is that 5% of online revenue for the year-end season came in on Giving Tuesday, which is a lot of revenue. And you're going to see even more than that coming in, especially around Colorado Gives Day, because you have kind of these multiple big giving days that are happening in your universe. So there's a tremendous amount of revenue coming in a very short time frame. But what we consistently see, and 2023 was maybe even an anomaly year because the 31st fell on a weekend. I think it was on a Sunday, if I'm not mistaken. And when that happens, we usually see lower giving happening on December 31st than when it falls on a weekday. This year, it falls on a weekday, and so we're going to see this number be even higher. But even so, December 31st brought in 14% of year-end revenue all in one day. If you go look at the week leading up to the year-end deadline, so the 24th through the 30th, an additional 32% came in just in that 1 week. So there's a tremendous amount of revenue at stake. What's really interesting is when you actually go dive deeper into what we call them the flux metrics. 3 key metrics: web traffic, conversion rate, and average gift size. Those 3 metrics all impact revenue in a direct way. And so sometimes it's helpful to see, as we look at these big giving days, what's happening with those 3 key metrics, because it might change our strategy. And what we're seeing as we look at web traffic is that web traffic is actually really consistent from Giving Tuesday compared to December 31st, compared to your daily traffic during that last week of the year. In fact, if you go divide this number out by the number of days in that time period, basically you're seeing roughly 2% of web traffic coming in on every single one of these days. During that last week of the year, we're seeing average 1.85% of your year-end traffic per day during the last week of the year. So there's not this big fluctuation in traffic that's happening that's causing the revenue disparity. What is happening is that you see this big jump in conversion rate. So that's really trying to measure like the motivation of people to give when they actually land on your site. On Giving Tuesday last year, we saw a 5% conversion rate, meaning 5% of the people that landed on a website chose to give on Giving Tuesday. December 31st, that number skyrockets. 5 to 8 may not sound like that big of a jump, but that's a 60% increase in the likelihood of someone to actually give a gift if they land on your website on December 31st compared to Giving Tuesday. The last week of the year is just below the Giving Tuesday benchmark, but that's still a really high conversion rate at 4%. And it gets even more interesting when you go look at average gift size, especially during that final week of 2023, leading up to the 31st. We saw 163% higher average gift size during that last week than we did on Giving Tuesday. So what you can expect is that people are likely to give during this coming week, either on Giving Tuesday yesterday all the way through Colorado Gives Day. They likely will give sizable donations, but most likely the biggest opportunity for seeing these larger donations is going to actually come in that last week and on the last day of the year. So we want to do our absolute best leading up to Colorado Gives Day, but we can't forget about how critical this last week of the year is going to be. Any thoughts on that? Any questions? Feel free to drop them in the chat. Happy to chat more about that. We've got tons of data around all these kind of key giving days. Looks like Jordan's jumping in here. We see millions come in from nonprofits on coloradogives.org in the last few days of the year. So don't feel like, oh, I should not ask again. There's tremendous revenue still at stake. Love it. Well, here's where we're going to go. We're going to talk about emails and what you should be sending during that last week of the year. We're going to talk about your website and things that you can do to drive more of that traffic that's coming in to your donation page. Again, if conversion rates are high, motivation to give is high, we just need to get those people to the right place. And so how do we do that? We're going to look at a bunch of tactics there. And then we're going to spend a little bit of time just reinforcing some key concepts for your donation page. Again, first thing we're going to talk about is email. And, if you've been tracking with us the past several sessions that we've put together, we talked about building your email strategy for Colorado Gives Day. We talked about building a larger email strategy around the year-end season. I gave you a few different examples of different emails. I gave you kind of a year-end timeline. We talked about 3 specific types of emails to include. Personal appeals. We talked about cultivation or priming emails. And we talked about what I call the closer emails. These like ultra high urgency emails that we send on the 30th, on the 31st, at the end of Colorado Gives Day, as you're getting to these really critical deadlines. I want to spend a little bit more time walking through what should these emails look like from December 25th through the end of the year. And ultimately the key concept here is if we want to go build a series of emails that's human and personal and is focused on increasing the urgency to give. Now, that doesn't mean that every single email we send is going to be this high urgency appeal, but that's the narrative and the approach we're trying to build through the last week is being human, being personal, but also increasing urgency along the way. So here's how I'd recommend that we go build this. This is just a quick snapshot of the last week of the year going into the first week of the new year. You can see kind of all these kind of key holidays that are going on in those couple of weeks. What I would recommend to you is an email strategy that looks something like this, where you have an email that's going out on the 25th. Maybe it's the day before. You can kind of pick and choose. It doesn't have to be on like Christmas Day, but sending a more of a cultivation email on that day. And then as we get towards the end of that week on the 27th on Friday, maybe even that Saturday, sending an email that's kind of getting people ready for that final year-end push. That Monday on the 30th, now we're really starting to ramp up the urgency. And then Tuesday, these are like the final push, final reminders. We're not rehashing all the details, but we're reminding people of the deadline, the goal, and the incentives to give. So let's take a slightly zoomed in look on this email, the kind of Christmas Day, or in this year, Christmas Day is also the start of Hanukkah. Now, if you can lean into the details of Christmas Day or the start of Hanukkah, go for it. Not every donor file is going to be ready for that. Maybe you need to talk about just the holiday season, and that's okay. But really the spirit of this like December holiday email is just to express shared values of the season, which is generally around giving and being thankful and looking ahead to the next year, and giving to others, all those good things that happen around the holiday season that we talk about in songs and in language and all sorts of different things. So the December holiday email could look a lot of different ways, but the one thing that it's really primarily trying to do is cultivate people, to show gratitude, similar to the email that we hopefully all sent on Thanksgiving or around Thanksgiving. We're giving them credit for the good work that has happened this year. We're bringing them into the narrative and into the story and showing them the tremendous impact that they are having through their support of your organization, whether that's financial support or that's more like emotional support. Maybe they've been a volunteer, they've engaged with you in some way. We want to give them credit for that and show them the impact. Now, this email here on the left looks very different than what we've looked at when we walked through in that whole session, going through all those proven tactics around email appeals. I throw this in here, and you'll see several examples today that look a little bit different, just to show you that these are not emails that we're just kind of making up, but these are different types of emails that are being used by large nonprofits across the country, and they can take a wide variety of forms. Now, use your best optimization skills based on what you've learned from our training over the past few months to go nuance these things, optimize them, but I wanted to show you kind of a wide variety of examples. So as you put this email together, I have a quick checklist for you. I won't read it verbatim for you, but you'll have all these slides to kind of go through. But there's really four main things that we want to do with this email. And you'll see a lot of these as a theme throughout several of these emails. Number one, we want to acknowledge their name, call them by their first name, and have some sort of connection with them of, what's their level of engagement with you, with the organization? Have they given to you? Again, have they volunteered? Did they come to an event? If you can get to that level of specificity to kind of like identify them and show that you know them, that can go a really long way in just building a connection. We want to acknowledge our shared values with them around the holiday. Again, if you can go talk about the holiday specifically, and you know that they celebrate Christmas or they celebrate Hanukkah or they celebrate something else, that's awesome if you can get that level of specificity. But it's okay to be a little bit more broad, talking about the holiday season, but leaning into those shared values that you have with your donors and potential donors. We want to call them to engage with some form of content if you can. This could be an article, it could be a blog that's just celebrating some of the wins from this year, the accomplishments this year. It could be a thank you video. It could be a highly produced video showcasing all the good work. It could be a video that you just pull your phone out and you go take a quick little video of yourself just expressing your gratitude for them and go pop that in the email. It could be that simple. That might even be the better email because that's more genuine and human. But consider, what can you ask them to go engage with on a content level to just go find a way to create more of a human connection and get them to lean in. Absolutely do not ask for money in this email. The moment you throw a little PS, will you give today kind of call to action in the email, you've undercut the whole point of the email. So don't ask for money in this email. You will be tempted. Resist the temptation. So that's your December holiday email. It can be, again, it can look a lot of different ways, shapes, and forms, but the primary goal is to cultivate and to show gratitude. And then you get to the end of this week, you get to Friday, the 27th, and you could go kind of push this into Saturday if you wanted to give a little bit more space between your emails. But as you're getting to the end of this week, I would send an email like this. We call this the only days left email. There's only a few days left before the deadline. Now, if you remember back to our year-end timeline, we talked about having sort of a kickoff year-end overview email. We talked about even having that for the Colorado Gives Day campaign as well. This email is similar in nature to that kind of overview email, but it just shouldn't go into as much depth. We don't want to rehash every single detail, all the different nuance, but we do want to remind people of those key reasons why they should give. Not just that there's a deadline, not just that there's a tax incentive, because every other organization can remind their donors of that, but what's really the core problem that you're trying to solve as an organization? What are maybe some of those accomplishments from this year where you've made progress thanks to the generosity of a donor? What are some of those things coming up that you can see down the road into 2025 that must be worked on, that have great needs, that you need the support of donors to actually go impact. So it's similar to that overview email. It is a direct donation call to action type of email. We're not necessarily ramping up all the urgency quite yet. We're a little bit more focused on value proposition, but you can have elements of urgency, again, talking about that deadline, leaning into incentives, but we need to make sure that we capture the why, the value proposition of why someone should give. So in this email, again, acknowledge their name and their relationship with you, summarize those most important challenges and values that are at stake going into a new year. Commit and double down to, we're going to go attack this challenge. We're going to go solve this problem. We're going to go impact these people, and do that in a really meaningful way in your copy. Ask for an immediate donation, providing a very clear call to action, and then ultimately remind them of the urgency of the need and the time that's left to give. So that's your only days left email. And then we get into Monday, the 30th, the December 30th email. And this is like the start of of those emails that I call the closers, where we're kind of done talking about all the different value proposition angles, and we're leaning much more into reminding people of the opportunity and showcasing the deadline and leveraging incentives. So you can still remind of maybe a couple quick points of value proposition. We don't want that to ever get fully lost, but this email is on the spectrum of like, long copy value proposition to short copy high urgency. We're probably getting into more of this range into high urgency. This is the last final push before the last day. So it's definitely a high urgency type of email. You can see the example on the left side of your screen. A few things to keep in mind. Again, call them by name. We always want to call our donors by name. There's plenty of testing and data to show how impactful that is in just driving more engagement, opens, clicks, donations, etc. We want to acknowledge the deadline and the urgency. That really is the focus of this email. That doesn't mean we throw value proposition away, but the focus is reminding them of the urgency, that we need their help in order to accomplish X, Y, and Z before the start of the new year. This might be a time where if you have any new incentives or any new, it could be like an additional matching challenge, or if you give before the deadline, we'll send you this free thank you gift, that sort of thing. Sometimes those get introduced in those last couple of days of the year. This would be a great time to announce that. And then again, make a clear call to action to ask someone to give. Don't ask them to learn more. Don't ask them to like join the fight or something that's a little bit more vague. Ask them clearly to give. We want to ask them to take the right next step, which is to make a donation. And then you get to Tuesday. This is the day. This is the biggest day of giving of the entire year, which is why we're going to send 2 emails. You may start to look at these emails and say, this is a ton of communication. There's a lot of emails going out. I already have been sending a lot. I don't know that I can get away with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 emails in basically 5 or 6 days. I would remind you that this end of the year season is absolute chaos in the inbox. And sure, you might be contributing to that a little bit, but you're also competing, not just with other nonprofits. You're also competing just for visibility with every other business that's out there trying to sell anything in the world. And so we have to give ourselves the best chance to stand out. And one of the primary ways is just to send more frequently. So that's my encouragement to you, is don't be afraid of sending a lot of emails, because the likelihood that someone is going to see every single email that you send is incredibly low. We have to remember that. If you go look at your open rates, they're likely around that 20%, maybe pushing 30% will be a really good open rate, which means that anywhere from 70 to 80% of the people that you're emailing aren't seeing your email, at least aren't opening your email. And especially during year end, when you go log into Gmail and you've got like 50 new emails that are all trying to sell you something, you're not reading every single one of those. So don't be afraid of sending a larger volume, because if you go send 5 emails, you're likely going to get seen once. If you send 1 email, you might not get seen at all by a lot of your donors. So don't be afraid of the volume. Here's what I'd encourage you to do on December 31st. Send a morning email and send an evening email. This is the final push. Everything about these emails should be driving urgency and leveraging incentive. We looked at some test examples around that a couple sessions ago, where we looked at an email that had every single element of the email was either talking about the deadline or the incentive to give and have your gift matched, in some cases even tripled. In this case, you see this example there on the left. Same kind of thing is going on. You see from the headline, it says last day. The little tiny headline above it says triple match challenge. The button says triple your gift. Everything in the copy talks about tripling your impact or giving by the deadline. It is all about urgency. It is all about incentives. The goal here is to remind people of that deadline and lean into urgency and incentive to get them to actually get over the hump and make that donation. This is assuming that you've told this cohesive story over the year-end season around why someone should give. They first have to have that understanding in order for this email to be effective. So your morning email that you should send on the last day of the year, you'll see similar themes. Acknowledge their name, acknowledge the deadline and urgency, announce any new incentives you might have. Maybe your double match just got upgraded to a triple match. Maybe that's jumping up to a 5X match. I actually got a text message from an organization yesterday that said, find out if your gift will be doubled or tripled, which I wouldn't encourage you to do that. It has like a very vague matching challenge, but you may ratchet up the matching opportunities as you go here. This talks about adding other incentives as well, like progress bars, countdown clocks, maybe even social stats of this many people have given. We need you to be one of however many donors before the end of the day. There's lots of different ways that you can go add some other kind of incentives in there too. And then ultimately clear call to action to give. In the evening, and then I see there's lots of comments and questions. We'll pause after this for a moment. In the evening of the 31st, I would encourage you, and we've looked at these examples, to basically go resend that morning email. You can't necessarily go into HubSpot or MailChimp or Constant Contact and hit like forward or reply, but go take that original email, include it at the bottom of your evening email, and then add a little note up top so it looks just like I sent you a forward or I sent you an email reply. And just say something like this. Hey, just a quick reminder, there's only a few short hours to make your donation before the deadline. Clear call to action. Yes, I want to make my final year-end gift. Again, we don't need to rehash all the details. We want to remind people of the opportunity. You can read more down below if you want to. It's just a kind reminder at the end of the day. Again, you'll have all these slides so you can kind of go through these checklists as you put these emails together. But that's my recommendation for you as you go build your last week of the year communication plans. Where we're going to go next is we're going to talk about your website and a bunch of different tactics that you can use on your website to drive more of the right people to the right place to actually give. Before we do, I want to take a quick look at the chat because I have seen there's lots of conversation going on.
Yeah, there's some good questions in here.
Any that stand out to you that we should answer?
Yeah, I think there was a couple of great ones. I'm addressing Caitlin's question, but Allison had said, and I thought this was a good one, do you think it's important to make sure to remove someone from these emails after they make a gift? And I think you had also said this in our Slack channel, that you had some suggestions for people to maybe opt out too. So I wanted to make sure maybe to highlight that one.
Yeah, I certainly, if someone gives, I'd throw them on a suppression list, especially if they give earlier in this season. So that you're not just sending them appeal after appeal after appeal. However, if you go look at your data, you may find that there are many people who give multiple times throughout the season. I would almost want to think about Colorado Gives Day kind of separate from the rest of the year-end season, especially if you're treating them differently in your messaging. So I wouldn't go suppress everyone who gave for Colorado Gives Day for your final push of the year. I would probably start fresh after that, and then have a new suppression list. That's anyone who gives after Colorado Gives Day, drops on that suppression list for the rest of the year-end season. But you may consider sending them a dedicated appeal in those last couple of days to say, hey, I know you've already given. We have this much more to go to hit our deadline. Would you be able to make an additional donation to help us get to the goal? So you could still send them like that kind of one additional appeal, and they may be willing to give again. But I certainly would scale back the volume of appeals that they're getting because they have already given. I wouldn't exclude them from any of the cultivation. Keep them in all the cultivation so that they consistently know the impact that the gift is making. On the, I mean, Jordan, you mentioned like the unsubscribe side of it. I think we've talked about it a couple of times, but it's certainly worth repeating. A primary strategy to go reduce unsubscribes in this season is, instead of just having your global like opt out or unsubscribe link at the bottom of the email, you can go create, there's a lot of ways to do it depending on your platform that you use, but you can go create a separate like suppression list, basically, where someone can click a link that says, I'm just not ready to give right now. And maybe they go fill out a quick form that auto fills with their email address, and they can submit that to get on your suppression list for the year-end season. So they don't unsubscribe from all of your communication forever, but you give them the option to say, hey, I support you and I care about this work and I care about this organization. I'm just not ready to give right now. So then you can go back to them and keep them on your list going into the next year, and continue to give them all kind of the good cultivation content that you're sending throughout the season. Okay.
I had a question that has come up a lot for me, so I wanted to put it out there before we moved on. So I get asked a lot about, should we mention the tax benefits? Like, this is the time of year that people are thinking about it, especially in the last couple of days. It seems in some ways to go against what we've learned in copywriting or value propositions, but also it's an incentive. So what have you seen work well, and should people talk directly about tax benefits?
Yeah, I wouldn't spend a ton of time talking about the details of it. The people that really matters for, they know about it. I don't think you need to give them an explanation of all the tax benefits. But you also don't have to hide it or something. I mean, I would consider it as an incentive for sure, but keeping in mind that it is not a unique incentive. So every single one of us today, we could all say the same thing about the tax incentives to give. We can all talk about the deadline, and those can be impactful things, but it can't exist on its own without the value proposition of why someone should give to you. If I'm just looking to go, make a donation to get the tax deduction, I can do that literally anywhere. So why should I give to your organization? So we have to lead with value proposition, but then that can be mentioned as one of the incentives to give before December 31st.
And then Morgan is just concerned, I guess she's pretty aware with her audience that they have said they don't want their inboxes flooded or have indicated that. So you think there's a revised strategy or just segmentation?
I mean, Caitlin says it in her reply there, that opt-down option of giving them the opportunity to say like, hey, I'm not ready to give right now, or opt out for a little bit of time, I think is a good approach there. Something that we consistently find, like, oh, let somebody in who's in the waiting room. Something we consistently find, like, people say one thing and they behave often in a very different way. So you may have someone that says, oh, I don't want to be flooded with emails, but then they might actually miss the entire opportunity to give because we've opted them out without them really opting themselves out. We've just excluded them because we're fearful of overwhelming them. And now they've missed the chance to even give because they just weren't reminded. And so that's certainly something to consider. You may get some responses from a handful of people that say, this is a lot of emails. When you get that reply, send them a nice reply and go put them on a suppression list so you don't continue to overwhelm them. But I wouldn't make that assumption on their behalf, because you might actually be taking away the opportunity to give from them that they'd be expecting this season.
Such a good point. And that is typically what we see for Colorado Gives Day. If we send emails, there's a couple of people that say, hey, this is a lot of emails. But generally, if we don't send emails, people are much more upset that they didn't get the opportunity. So thank you for saying that.
Yeah. It's really easy to listen to like the few, especially if they give a lot of money, the few like loud voices that reply, but they don't necessarily represent the whole. So we got to tread lightly with those kind of comments. Let's talk about website, and we'll keep things moving. So we try to stick on time here. Lots of good questions coming in. So please keep those coming as you have more, and we'll spend some more time here in a little bit answering them. Website. What we want to do is make it easy for people to find where to give. That sounds really straightforward. It sounds really simple. And honestly, it is, but some of the tactics implementing them can have some different complications. I want to give you a bunch of different ideas and a bunch of different tactics that you can go install. Some of them require a little bit more sophistication on the technology side. So wherever you're at, if you've got a team of people that can go help you with that, maybe lean into some of the more complex ones. If you don't have a team that can go help you with that, I'm going to provide you with a handful of tools that you can go use to go quickly install some of these ideas as well. But there's going to be something for everybody here. And ultimately, our goal and our homework after this is to go install at least one of these tactics. So let's take a look. There's a bunch of things you can do. There's a bunch of different placements for, I mean, they're ads, really. They're like native ads on your website, ways to go promote the opportunity to give to people that are engaging with you in some way, shape, or form. Here's a handful of the different placements, and then we're going to look at applications of these. There's your navigation. What are you doing in your navigation to make it clear where someone should go to make a gift? There's sticky bars, which can be at the top or the bottom of your page or your website. Usually a great place to promote something that's urgent, a deadline, or something that's brand new. Homepage ad, like a native placement within the content on your site, using prime real estate on your page to draw attention to the opportunity to give. You've got pop-ups, which are pretty self-explanatory. There's a few ways you can install those. We'll go look at those options. And then you've got slide out. So as you scroll down the page, something slides out of the side of the screen to interrupt you, to grab your attention and draw your attention to, in this case, the opportunity to make a year-end gift. So there's lots of different placements. There's more than just these, but these are some of the kind of more standard ones and fairly simple to install options. Let's look at some test examples and some data around these different types of ad placements that you can use to go drive more of the right people to your giving page during that last week. Starting with the navigation. We've seen some of this as we've gone through like some concepts around donation page optimization, but I'll show you some pretty clear experiments of just the impact of making the offer or the option to give more visible. Version A, the original header up here that you can take a look, try to find the donate button. It might take you a couple seconds to actually read through every single little thing in the navigation to find where it says donate right there in the middle. It's not called out in a different kind of treatment than anything else in the navigation, so it can be hard to find. And when urgency to give and motivation to give is so high, anything that slows people down or stands in their way or adds an additional click can often keep them from giving, especially at a high volume and at scale. Version B adds this make my gift button right here. So they kind of rearranged the navigation a little bit. They moved these like 3 blue links up top with the search bar. They made the make my gift button really stand out, very clearly visible. They didn't get rid of the donate link. They just added the make my gift button. This led to a 74% increase in donations. And ultimately, these people were actually giving more. So this can be a very impactful strategy of just making sure the option to give is clear. Adding this little kind of button style treatment to the donate option in the navigation. We see the same sort of thing over here. In this experiment, they didn't add a brand new button. They didn't like add a new tier in their navigation. They just turned the donate link into a purple button. And they saw that this led to a 190% increase in people actually giving. So oftentimes, especially during the last week and during the year-end season, when motivation to give is so high, we just need to make it clear and visible where to go. You don't want anything to stand in their way. So that's kind of your key principle here on your navigation. Make it easy to find your donate button, whether that's by calling it out in a different color, or it's by adding an additional one in kind of like a different line or a different tier. We just want to make the option very clear and very visible. Pretty straightforward there. Let's talk about homepage ads. And I want to show you a little bit of data around when these are impactful and just how impactful they can be. So here's one option of what this might look like. This one says, double your gift, find out more. And this is a banner that just stretches across the page. There's lots of different treatments for things like this. Oftentimes a more like organic approach is not going to feel like an ad and might actually get more visibility as someone's reading through the content on your page. Something like this is an approach you can take too. It's a big banner that just stands out right in the middle of your content. So lots of different things you can test around it with the copy and the call to action, all sorts of things. What's really interesting about this one to me, though, is we actually ran this as over the course of the season, and we were watching conversion rates over time. And what we found was that early in the month of December, so right about now, basically, they were seeing a fairly low conversion rate. not nothing, but about 1%, 1.1% conversion rate. So that's people actually clicking on the banner, going to the page and giving. But as you got closer to the end of the year, when urgency is really high during that last week, so you can see the 21st through the 27th, they saw this jump up to a 4.6% conversion rate. I share this just to show you with some clear data that the motivation to give increases dramatically during that last week. And again, our goal is to use things like this to go capture their attention, drive them to the right place, make sure that there's as little friction as possible in actually getting them to the giving page by calling out the opportunity to give with banners and ad placements like this. Here's a great experiment. I believe I've shown you this one before, but I want to show it to you again because it just shows the impact of leading with value proposition, not just talking about the matching opportunity or the deadline or just the branding of your campaign, but the importance of clarity, even in something like a homepage ad. Version A says this Christmas change life, doesn't really give you a lot of information. The call to action doesn't provide a lot of clarity. It says shop now. What am I shopping for? Whose life am I changing? How is shopping making an impact? I don't quite know. Unless I'm more of an insider, I don't know what this actually means. Version B says you can change a life with a gift. It adds 2 sentences of copy explaining exactly how you can make an impact. And now the call to action is much clearer. Change a life by giving a gift. So when you think about adding promotions and ads on your website, on your homepage specifically, don't just make it look nice. Don't just talk about the deadline. Don't just talk about like the tagline of the campaign. Add a little bit more detail. It doesn't have to be much, a little bit more detail to explain the impact of the gift, not just the tax deduction, but also the impact that you can make, because this led to a 35% increase in donations. High level, use prime real estate on your homepage to increase traffic to your donation page. So do a quick audit. Where are the spaces on my homepage that I could actually add some type of promotion or plug to drive people to the right place to give? Let's talk about pop-ups. Everyone's favorite thing. Everybody loves a good pop-up. You've probably had some bad experiences with pop-ups. Most of us have. They infuriate us sometimes, especially the ones on our own website. I feel this way when I go to our Next After website sometimes and I see a banner or a pop-up that I've seen a million times. We have to keep in mind that we are on our own websites probably more than anyone else. And so these types of things infuriate us because we see them every single day when we log onto our website to check this, that, or the other thing. Most people are not on our website every single day and being interrupted by these all the time. And there's lots of things you can do to kind of control how often pop-ups deploy so you're not overwhelming someone. And they can be a really, really impactful tool to drive more of the right traffic to your giving page during that last week. Here's one quick example of what one might look like. It doesn't always have to be complicated. This is a kind of a nicely designed one. Give to support family ministry. They're a faith-based organization. Your gift is a sacred trust. Your generosity will be used where it is needed most. Give now. You can close it. You can hit no thanks. This is a timed pop-up. So after you're on the page for, let's say, 10 seconds, this pops up, kind of interrupts you and shows you the opportunity to go make a gift. You might get some traffic moving through this pop-up and actually converting. What's really interesting is when we launched this pop-up, it was interesting to see what happened when it wasn't on the page. And so when we go compare over time the conversion rate of having the pop-up versus not having the pop-up, there's some really interesting things that come out that are important for us as we think about the last week of the year. You have early on, so from December 16th, maybe even 15th through the 26th, the pink line is conversion rate without a pop-up. The gray line is conversion rate with the pop-up. It's basically the same. You know, sometimes the pink line is above the gray line, sometimes the gray line is above the pink line, but it's effectively the same. The conversion rate doesn't really change very much during those early weeks of December. But when you get into that last week, you see that adding the pop-up actually drives significantly more conversions. So once that motivation to give kind of hits this peak during the last week of the year, adding this pop-up to show people so clearly where the option to give is drove more people to the page and actually drove more people to complete their gift. So it can be highly effective during that last week. But you see this big giant spike on the 31st, things changed a little bit. The pop-up actually on the 31st, when motivation to give is like absolutely sky high, it actually hindered conversions a little bit, not a ton, but a little bit, which would imply that when someone's motivation is absolutely through the roof, like the only reason people are on your website on the 31st is to give a gift, adding this extra maybe barrier, this extra click that's in the way of getting to the page may actually have hindered people from giving. So we want to run these pop-ups during that last week, but you might not run it on the last day. We'll look at a different strategy of what you can do on the last day to make it even easier to get to the giving page. But again, that's what we found. Early on, when motivation is low, pop-up doesn't really make that much difference. When it's high, it can be really, really helpful and cause people to speed up and get to the page faster. When motivation is through the roof, it may actually slow people down and not be quite so helpful. But that's a tactic you can think about and go implement during that last week. Another type of pop-up is called an exit intent pop-up. This pops up as you are moving your cursor towards the exit button or to the back button. The intention of this is not just to kind of interrupt you like the timed pop-up, but it's actually to kind of end, or we'll say to pick up where the page has left off. If I just read through an article or a blog, I got some good value from it. Okay, I'm done here. I'm going to go hit the back button. This pops up and says something like this: before you go, will you consider something? It's very relevant to that moment that someone is actually interacting with it. Before you go, will you consider something? Then they move into a whole appeal about why you should give to this organization and become a Caring Bridge partner. This would be a recurring donor actually to this organization. Now, they actually tested adding some more specificity and almost communal language, maybe social proof even, to the call to action, saying, would you consider joining 328 fellow supporters and becoming a Caring Bridge partner, inviting you more into this like smaller community of people that really care about this cause. They found that led to a 12% increase in donations. These types of pop-ups can be really effective at taking people that are on your site, maybe for a different reason, not just to give. Maybe they're there to find out more information about a program. Maybe they're reading a blog post or something like that, and pivoting their motivation into this opportunity to give. So consider running these during the last week of the year. Use both of these. Use time pop-ups and exit intents to drive donation page traffic during that last week. A few quick ones here we won't spend too much time on. A slide out is very similar to the timed pop-up, where it can kind of interrupt people as they're reading through or scrolling through a page. This organization tested using a slide out instead of this like emergency alert, like sticky bar banner, and found there's a couple changes going on, but they found this to be better at actually converting more donors. So you can play with these different types of placements to see what's going to be most effective. And again, there's tons of things inside of the copy that you can go tweak and change in order to test your way towards better results. But consider slide outs very similar to those time pop-ups to interrupt someone as they're reading through some content. I'd highly encourage you, if you have articles and blogs and that type of content on your site, to consider how you can leverage an ad placement inside of the article copy to drive people to give. This organization has a lot of articles on their site. They talk a lot about tax policy in the state of Illinois. So you can read a lot about kind of what's going on in Illinois government and Illinois tax policy. And what they were doing was just using a slide out to go get someone to sign up for their email list. And on the back side of that, there's an opportunity to give. You can always hit the donate button at the top to give. There's a link in the footer to give as well. So there's some opportunities, but it's not the focal point. What they tested was probably something that you've seen as you read through other news sources, is these Dear Reader ads. So at the end of the article, they insert this big block that says Dear Reader, and it positions a longer form, value proposition heavy appeal, asking someone to actually make a donation. So they skip past the email sign up part. They jump straight to the donation appeal. And they actually saw this dramatic increase in starting to convert their readers into donors. Now, the 695% sounds like a crazy number. When you go from a tactic that's not purely focused on donations to one that is, you're going to see some big giant numbers. But now they have a steady way to go convert their readers into donors. So if you have this type of content on your site, this can be a very impactful type of tool, especially during the year-end season. So add these Dear Readers to articles, blogs, news, or any content in a similar fashion on your website. Tara's asking, would an exit intent pop-up be good for our hosted Colorado Gives page, or this really for end of year campaign? It's actually something you could consider on that Colorado Gives page as well. Sometimes, as you can kind of apply this however you think is best for you, sometimes we've actually tried adding like a different type of offer on that page. So if someone reads through the copy, they get to the donation form, they choose not to give and they choose to leave, you can use an exit intent pop-up to either ask them why, or to maybe ask them if you want to remind them about the opportunity to give, or you might ask them to sign up for some kind of piece of content. Say, I know you're not ready to give today, but we thought you'd be interested in this ebook, this video, this whatever. And then on the back side of that, you can lead them towards the opportunity to give with a follow-up email or even on the confirmation page. So there's lots of ways that you can go leverage it, and it may be effective to go capture some people who are considering giving but maybe haven't made that choice yet. High urgency banners. We won't spend a ton of time here, but it's a little bit more of an advanced tactic, a little bit more technical, but can be really impactful. You have certainly seen things like this if you have ever been on Wikipedia in the last month of the year. I haven't actually peeked to see what they're doing this year yet, but they always share their results, which is really interesting. This is from a couple years ago, something that they were running. If Wikipedia is giving you $2.75 worth of knowledge this year, take a minute to donate. You can hit that button and go straight to the form to go give. They also were testing this like big giant block at the top of the page that actually has a little giving widget right there with longer form value proposition copy. These are all different forms of high urgency banners driving you during this high urgency season to give. We've tested things like this. This is a similar or a different form of basically the same thing that you see here on the Wikipedia site, where at the top of the site, they have the little paragraph talking about the impact of giving. This organization doesn't like us showing all their stuff publicly, so that's why you see some lorem ipsum copy in there. But they ran this test actually looking at what if we added specifically in here, I'll say you've got the copy and then you've got the little giving widget, and then they're talking about the number of donors needed in order to save lives. And what they found was that this was actually 27% more effective than if they didn't have a goal in that copy. So the control basically said, yes, I'd like to become a donor and save lives. This version says, I'd like to be one of 39,000, which is a big group of people, but it led to more people giving. They also found that when they shrunk that goal and made it even more tangible, they talked about the daily goal. I'd like to become one of 675 donors needed today. They found that that led to an additional 35% increase in donations. So these types of high urgency banners can be really effective, but also consider, can you add that your year end or even your Colorado Gives Day goal right there in the copy and make it tangible for people so they can wrap their head around how they can be a part of this community that's making an impact. So there's another quick tactic for you. The last one that I'm going to land on here is called a homepage takeover. This is probably the most technical of any of these. And so if there's one of these that's maybe out of reach for some, if you don't have like a marketing and web team to support you, this might be a little bit out of reach. But if you can pull it off, it can be really, really effective on that last day of the year. We said with the timed pop-ups, you get to the 31st and those timed pop-ups kind of stood in the way of conversion. A homepage takeover literally takes over the homepage and positions a donation ask with a form right there on the page. So here's an example. Version A of this page looked like this. This was the homepage. They have this big banner at the top that's talking about the opportunity to give and to give now. You've got a big orange Give Now button. You would think that this might be enough. It's very clear, it's very visible, but it still is an additional click to click there and actually make the choice to then go to the giving page and then read more about giving and then fill out the form. What they tested was something like this. So on the homepage, it has now been completely taken over and replaced with a giving page. They lead with significant value proposition copy. If you scroll down the page, you would see there's a donation form right then and there. It is basically cloning their year-end giving page and putting it on the homepage for anyone that shows up there on the last day of the year. Now, that might strike some fear into some people to say, well, what if people don't want to give and they're looking for something else on the website? I'll show you an example in a moment of how you can kind of bypass that. But this approach led to a 31% increase in donations on that last day of the campaign. So I would highly encourage you, if you can pull it off, to use one of these on the last day of the year, because it just removes all the barriers from getting someone from your homepage to the actual point of giving and puts it right there front and center. And you might capture the attention of a lot more people who maybe weren't considering giving, who now are, because it's right there on the last day of the year. We'll often implement something like this on these pages where you have a little link that says, hey, click here to go continue to the homepage. So you always have a way to kind of click through and bypass the page and get to the content that you want. And normally you can set it up so that it doesn't show every single time you hit the website. So if you come back later in the day and you've already seen this page, you won't see it again. You see the normal homepage. So there's lots of little things you can do to kind of mitigate maybe frustration that some people would have, but it can be, again, highly, highly impactful for driving greater giving. So consider using a homepage takeover during that last day of the year. Ultimately, every tactic that we're talking about here, we're just trying to drive more of the right people to the donation page. If traffic is fairly consistent through those big giving days, how do we get the traffic on our site to get to the right place? These tactics are getting more of the right people to get to the right place because their motivation to give is that much higher on the last day of the year. Okay, that's a lot. I'm not going to go do a deep dive on donation pages. We've done this before. We did this last time. I do just want to remind you, though, that once we get through Colorado Gives Day, now we're talking about the rest of the year-end season. A lot of the same principles still apply. Primarily, this whole idea that we want to emphasize incentives, we want to increase urgency, but we also want to lean into continuity so that when you're sending out ads, you're sending out direct mail, maybe you got postcards going out, you've got emails, you've got website banners and website ads and all these different things, social media, etc., that we don't just drop people off on the standard donation page where there's no real language about the year-end campaign. We don't want them to experience this whiplash effect where, the direct mail piece I just got in my mailbox talks about this matching incentive and talks about these reasons I should give. And then when I come to the donation page, because I scanned the QR code or I typed in the URL, I don't see any of that same language. It doesn't even talk about the year-end campaign. We don't want them to have this whiplash effect. We want to make sure that our communication is aligned and continuous in our messaging, where we use a cohesive, dedicated year-end donation page, just like you're doing for the Colorado Gives Day campaign. So a few quick checklist items for you. Again, none of these are new. It's just kind of trying to remind you and solidify a few ideas. We want to clearly reference the year-end campaign and any unique campaign messaging right there on our dedicated year-end page. If you can, I'd like you to add a countdown clock during the final week of the year to go increase urgency. We saw last session that if you add those too early, they don't really help increase urgency, but they're most effective during that last week. We want to clearly articulate the campaign goal. And if you can, talk about the number of donors needed rather than just the revenue amount, because it makes it more tangible for someone. And then we want to highlight the incentive so that they don't get missed. Don't just mention it in the copy, but consider adding a sticky bar or some other visual to go call out the incentive so that they don't get missed on the page. A couple additional tactics for you to consider that we've tested. Version A and version B here are the same page. The main difference here is that there's a sticky bar at the top that doesn't add any new value proposition, but it does reinforce the messaging in a unique way. Very highly visual. It stands out at the top of the page. It puts a face with a name that's actually sharing some of the messaging. And this led to a 150% increase in revenue. I'm not guaranteeing this increases your performance of your whole campaign by 150%, but it can be really impactful to just reinforce some of that messaging. We've also seen this. We talked about this briefly last month, but I didn't have the experiment to show, so I wanted to show it for you today. In this experiment, for mobile users on the donation page, they added this Start My Gift button, where when you click it, it drops you down to the donation form. And it actually led to a really sizable increase in donations. Keep in mind, though, that this was just for mobile users. And something to know is that everyone that was hitting this page was being primed very well for the donation offer. They're not new people that are showing up. This organization has a lot of podcasts, has like terrestrial radio programming. And so they're hearing through these different audio formats all about the reasons to give, and then they're getting to the page to go make their gift. So they've been really well primed. If you find that your donors are in that same sort of state where you've really well primed them, either at an event or they've just gotten something in the mail that's really powerful and it sends them to this page, consider this type of tactic to just get them to the form faster. But again, this was just for mobile users and for donors who were very well primed for the donation ask. I've got a few tools for you to consider to help you implement some of these things. I can't go give you a walkthrough of how to use every single one of them. They all have help articles and all that sort of stuff for you, but I can point you in the right direction. So if you want to go install a countdown clock, either on your website or in your emails, there's a tool we've used many times called power.io. It's powered without an E, POWR.io. And they have countdown clocks. It's got a bunch of different little widgets that you can install on your site as well, but these are probably the best tools that they have and the most relevant ones they have. So consider that for countdown clocks, again, on your website, donation page, or even in emails. There's a tool, it used to be called Sumo Me. It's now called Bdow. That is great for things like timed pop-ups, exit intent pop-ups, slide outs. There's a bunch of other little related types of widgets that they have as well that you can go use that tool to go install those. There's a tool called Unbounce that we often use as a landing page builder that also has a lot of these pop-up tools as well. So if you're also in the market for a landing page creation tool, Unbounce might be a good solution for you as well. So consider those for some of these other pop-up type of tactics. And then for more of these advanced things, like adding those dear readers or doing a homepage takeover, any sort of site customizations, our go-to tool for doing that stuff is called VWO. It's primarily an A/B testing tool, but you can use it for a lot of different personalization efforts on your website and a lot of different customizations. So I've got kind of a longer link in there, you see, because if you go sign up through that affiliate link that we have, you actually get a bunch of other perks. If you need a paid account, you get some discounts on it. You also get better customer support and a bunch of other stuff. So consider that, especially if you're looking into starting to do more A/B testing on your website. VWO is our primary and recommended tool for that. I'm going to pause. We can talk about, actually, I'll hit on our homework and then we'll do some questions. So your homework is this: to go implement at least one of these seemingly million tactics that we've covered in an hour today to go increase urgency on your website. Don't plan to do everything. I just want you to pick one thing that you can go plan to install before that last week of the year. It might be adding a countdown clock. It might be a sticky bar. It might be some sort of pop-up. Pick one thing and go make sure that that gets implemented. I'd rather you get one thing right than try to do 10 things at once and not really have any of them work. So pick one of those things, go install it, take a screenshot of it, and then go submit it through the homework form so that we can see what you've done. And then afterwards, I'd love for you to go share in our Slack community what you've been working on, what you're installing. So you might inspire some others and give other people some ideas to go help improve their year-end results as well. All right, I'm going to stop my screen share. I'm going to take a drink of water because I've been talking a whole lot, and we're going to look at some questions. Jordan, any major questions that have come in the past little bit that you think we should make sure to discuss?
Seeing, well, Tara had one. She said, would an exit intent pop-up be good for Colorado Gives Day page? And we addressed a little bit of that, if you're using a pop-up, ideally for Colorado Gives Day, you're sending primarily to the embeddable form on your website to keep them there, to keep them in the website experience.
Yeah.
And there is also a direct link to donate that you can grab from your organization page in the checkout area. So I thought that was a good question. I just wanted to reiterate that if you're driving folks somewhere for Colorado Gives Day, drive them to the embeddable form or the direct link to donate versus landing them on your org page. So then they have to figure out another button to click.
Great.
Yeah, I would love, if there's other questions, we've got a good group today. So feel free to raise your hand and hop off mute if that's okay with you, Nathan.
Oh yeah, that's fine. That's totally fine. Related, and in case I haven't said this clearly, I want to make sure I do say it clearly. We created that dedicated donation page for Colorado Gives Day using an embedded donation form. My recommendation to you is to do the same thing for the rest of your year-end campaign. Go create a dedicated page on your website, embedding your donation form, and use that as the primary place that you send people to give. So don't send them to like your organization about page on Colorado Gives, because then, as Jordan said, there's a couple clicks to get to the form. And we want to make sure that you have that value copy right there alongside your donation form as well. That embedded donation form gives you the power to go create a fully customized donation page on your website, so it stays on the same domain, the same URL, same logo treatments and styling, all that good stuff. And you can go customize it to your heart's content. So that is the intention for year end as well, is go create that dedicated page with the embedded form. And it opens the door wide open for all these other different little tactics to add countdown clocks and customize the copy and add sticky bars and all that type of stuff that can help increase conversions on your page. All right, I don't see any new questions coming in. Again, if you drop them.
I saw one from Emily just now. How do you balance the recommended frequency of emails while maintaining high open rates?
How do you balance the recommended frequency of emails with maintaining high open rates? Let me read the rest of the context. For instance, our Given Tuesday email yesterday had a 56% open rate. That's good.
That's real good.
Pretty darn good open rate. Our director believes this is tied to our more limited email frequency, could increase in the volume of emails, risk lowering this engagement. I think there's some simple math that you can do to try to understand the impact of sending less versus sending more. Your 56% open rate could be a total fluke. It likely is not tied to the volume of emails you're sending. If you are overwhelming people with emails consistently throughout the year and you're not sending valuable information, you're going to see a decline in engagement. But you're not going to magically see an increase in open rate just because you started sending fewer emails. Like that doesn't happen. It's likely due to it being Giving Tuesday, and you probably have a very motivated audience who really cares about your organization and was looking for the opportunity to give, because you've likely been doing some things to go prepare them for Giving Tuesday. Now, if you start to see a little bit of fall off in your open rate over the course of the year-end season, I wouldn't be afraid of that. You know, if your standard open rate, say, is 25%, and you start to see that drop to more like 20, down to 18, consider, again, like, how many people would you be missing if you cut your email volume in half, but saw a slightly higher open rate? Like, the math doesn't really work out in your favor just by cutting a handful of emails to get a marginal increase in open rates. So I wouldn't be afraid of the volume of emails. Now, if you've never sent a year-end email campaign before, I wouldn't start with 17 emails. You want to kind of stair-step your way into it and kind of warm people up for that cadence of communication. But yeah, I wouldn't be afraid of it. I'd make sure you go install some of these tactics we've talked about to go kind of mitigate against overwhelming people. So suppress people who have already given, just send them the cultivation if they've already made a donation. Add that like opt down link instead of the opt out link in the footer of your email, so you give them choice and kind of autonomy in how they engage with you. But I wouldn't be afraid of the large volume.
Caitlin had a good quick question that I wanted to bring up. That was a wonderful answer, by the way, Nathan. Thank you. She had said, so even if we're telling a story in an email and then people are committed to donating when they click the link, she's asking if she should still reiterate that content on the donation form page, so above the donation form.
Yeah, it's tricky because, like, there's this old experiment in our library, actually, where we ran this test that was trying to see where is the best place to put the copy. Should you have like long form copy in an email and short form copy on the donation page? Or should you have short form copy in the email and long form copy on the donation page? Like, where's the best place to engage someone to get them to actually read and to care? And how does it impact donations? This is a one-off experiment, but what we found was that it was more effective to put the bulk of the copy in the email and then have slightly shorter copy, not no copy, but slightly shorter copy on the donation page. So in an ideal world, you would have a customized donation page for every email that you send, so that the copy is like right in line. If you have a long form story and narrative in your email, maybe you have a slightly shorter form copy on your donation page. But the reality is, we're not going to go create a custom donation page for every single email we send. Nope, none of us have time for that. Even the most sophisticated, highly resourced organizations don't have time for that. So we have to find a middle ground, which is on that donation page, make sure that you reinforce the key messaging so that they know that they're in the right place to make the gift. If you're suddenly sending an email that talks about something totally different, you might need to have a customized donation page for it. But ideally, we're not introducing brand new messaging at this point in the year and talking about something radically different. So you do need to find that sweet spot of how can I give myself enough wiggle room on the donation page to talk about all the different things I need to in the email, and try to find that balance where you always have continuity. That's not like a clear, here's exactly how you do it type of answer, but that is the tension that we have to kind of deal with in these campaigns. Okay. Rocky Mountain House really needed this info. I'm so glad. I'm glad this is helpful. I know we have thrown a ton at you. Again, I don't expect that every single idea gets implemented over the course of the next few weeks. Pick one thing and knock it out and do it awesome, and then go keep building on that as you move into 2025. We've got a question. Is there a way to copy a fundraising page we created? This is probably a Jordan question. That we created for an individual. We would like to create custom fundraising pages for our board members and key donors and supporters of our organization.
Good question. And yes, so it's not so much copying. So that's not the action you're taking. Instead, you're setting up a template. And so there's a template in the fundraising tools area on your organization page. And it allows you, either you're generating those pages from that template on behalf of your board members and just saying, hey, here's the link. And so you're making either your job easier, or you're letting your board members click the link to fundraise and that template's set up. And so it's easier for them to quickly create the page and carry through some of your branding and content without you having to do everything for them. So yes, it's not copying the page, it's setting up a fundraiser template, and you can find that in the fundraising tools area. Good question.
Cool. Okay, we may be out of questions. Again, if you have more, if you got a burning one, feel free to drop it in the chat. Otherwise, send me a note in Slack, send Jordan a note in Slack, and we'll try to do our best to get back to you as soon as we can. I've been trying to check that a little bit more actively these days, as we've got 7 days left till the big day, and so I'll continue to try to check in there at least daily. If I don't get back to you right away, just keep bugging me, because if I keep singing it or keep seeing the little ping in Slack, that helps grab my attention. But any parting words of encouragement from you, Jordan, as we head into this final week?
I think just a big thank you and gratitude for everyone on these calls and participating in Level Up. You are our heroes. We also have gotten to get to know you so much better, and that's valuable information for us to continue to improve and provide other resources. So thank you so much for everything you're giving us, and I hope that this year has been also valuable for you guys. We are going to continue to have classes in 2025 until June, and we'll post that schedule. But just really feeling a lot of love and hoping you guys are too during this end of the year season. So thank you.
Sean asked if this is our last webinar. It is our last one for the year, but we will be picking it up in January and talking about something besides Colorado Gives Day, which I think we'll all need a healthy break from for a little bit. But we'll have some brand new topics. I think January, we're actually talking about new donors and new donor welcome series and onboarding and what to do as hopefully you have a flood of new donors that have just come in during this season. So lots more goodies to come in 2025. I'll say, just from my perspective, this is the highlight of my month, is getting to spend an hour and a half with all of you. It is just a joy to be able to see so many people that are just focused on how we innovate, how do we try something new, who aren't content with the status quo, but are always looking for how we grow giving and generosity. So I'm grateful to be part of this group with you all, and I'm glad we still got 6 more months of this going, at least for now, to keep optimizing, keep working to grow giving and generosity together. So I appreciate you all. Sean has asked
Nathan. Oh, go ahead.
date for the calendar. Do we have dates yet for the sessions in the new year?
Yeah, we'll probably post that. We'll definitely post it this month. I haven't put those out publicly yet, so I will chat everybody in Slack. Thank you for that reminder when those go public. We are still going to invite you via Zoom, so automatically, and so you don't have to RSVP or take any action. But I will publicly post those dates on the Level Up resources page.
Perfect. Perfect. All right. Well, if I don't see you or I don't hear from you in Slack, I wish you the best Colorado Gives Day, the best year end, happy holidays, happy new year. I appreciate you all. I'll see you in the new year.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.